Well, it's taken over a week, at least 50 hours of research, calls on calls upon yet even more calls, but I finally feel like I've gathered enough data to represent at least one slice of the information pie that pertains to human trafficking within Colorado. Very briefly, here's a rundown of everything I'll be throwing at you today. We're going to start off with the scope of the issue, following it up with what organizations have cropped up to join the fight and what they're doing to mitigate human trafficking, and we'll end by looking at how the fight against trafficking will go forward in years to come. Of course, there's going to be tons of numbers thrown around, many of which unfortunately will not be pleasant. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Obviously, human trafficking is a massive problem in the world at large and also in the United States, with authorities on the matter reporting it as the second largest criminal industry and also the fastest growing. Now, taking a look at this map put out by Polaris, the organization operating the human trafficking hotline, we can see some of those hotspots through the nation, with a concentrated area of human trafficking running right along the I-25 corridor through Colorado. Now, last year alone, the hotline received 592 calls from within Colorado regarding human trafficking, constituting the 11th highest call volume regarding trafficking in the states in 2016. From those tips, around 120 unique cases of trafficking were reported. This year, as of June, the hotline reports having received 198 calls from within Colorado, identifying almost 60 human trafficking cases. 26 of those calls that came in, they were from victims. Now, let's move it even a little bit more local. Here in Colorado Springs, in the past 4 years, Colorado Springs Police Department's human trafficking unit has investigated 191 cases spanning prostitution, involuntary service, and commercial sex acts. Those nearly 200 cases resulted in 127 arrests and the identification of 47 human trafficking victims. Now, all those numbers indicate a shocking amount of criminal activity, but there are three things you need to know about those numbers regarding human trafficking. First, these numbers obviously represent an outrageous offense against humanity. Second, these numbers obviously do not represent every single case of human trafficking, as it is, according to the organizations fighting it, widely underreported. And third, the number of reports, again according to Polaris, is increasing each year, up nationally 35% from 2015. However, this increase of reports coming in doesn't simply represent the expansion of the criminal market, but also an increasing amount of awareness and education regarding human trafficking, alongside increased efforts to fight it. So here's the rundown of a few of the significant efforts being made to educate Colorado residents on how to recognize human trafficking, as well as what is being done to fight the crime. While these again only represent a few of the efforts being made, they do circle around the major focus of all anti-trafficking movements. That is to say, they all focus on collaboration.
There's no one organization that can do all of this on their own, so we really have to partner and partner well to make a difference.
So getting right into it, for 2 years now, the Colorado Human Trafficking Council has been hard at work. In 2015, they were responsible for helping to push through a new bill promoting safe harbor acts. In short, it provides new protections to minors being trafficked. Additionally, for 2 years now, the council has been providing guides to housing authorities who wish to provide housing to trafficking victims. And this past year, the council spent time training 49 ambassadors who will act as trainers in the following counties: Mesa, El Paso, Pueblo, Jefferson, Wells, and Larimer. Additionally, the council is responsible for making recommendations to state legislators that are helping to create a safer future. But we'll come back to that in just a few minutes. Another force that has been working for change, this time closer to home, is the Human Trafficking Task Force of Southern Colorado. This band of volunteers started up 10 years ago and has been educating anybody and everybody in how to recognize, report, and act as a deterrent to trafficking. From its start until now, the group estimates it has educated around 2,000 Southern Colorado residents. Now, moving to a slightly larger operation, let's bring truckers into the mix.
The fact that this industry often finds itself in places where they intersect with potential victims of human trafficking, it really makes them a critical audience that needs to be trained around this issue so they know how to recognize and report this crime. So we work with every segment of the trucking industry, as well as law enforcement and government agencies, in order to really create a mobile army to hopefully assist victims and arrest traffickers and buyers.
In 2009, Truckers Against Trafficking, based out of Inglewood, Colorado, began their mission of turning the entirety of America's commercial driving force into an investigative army to recognize and report human trafficking. Since the birth of the nonprofit, TAT reports that over 500,000 truckers have been educated, resulting in nearly 2,000 calls from truckers being made to the human trafficking hotline. Those calls have identified 545 likely trafficking cases involving more than 1,000 victims, 315 of which were minors. Here in Colorado, the Department of Revenue hands out a wallet-sized info card from the TAT organization with each CDL renewal. But soon, if TAT and the Colorado Human Trafficking Council have their way, each new CDL licensee will require TAT training before being licensed.
So before they ever hit those roads, they understand this issue. They recognize that forced prostitution, in particular, is something that they may come into contact with, and so how can they play a role in helping to change a person's life? And that's really what the crux of the training is all about.
Now, it doesn't cost trucking companies a single dollar, and each training session only takes about 30 minutes, but could save any number of lives. Now, this is a proposed bill being put before the Colorado legislation in early 2018. If passed, it could mean hundreds of new eyes and ears on the road in years to come, watching out for signs of trafficking. And while we're looking ahead, let's come back around to Colorado's Human Trafficking Council. The organization has 2 additional recommendations being backed by state lawmakers for the 2018 legislative session. One recommendation will push for more trafficking recognition in rural Colorado areas, and the other will push for more legal protection for children who were forced into illegal activity as a part of their trafficking. In addition to these new bills being pushed, the council is also planning to launch its law enforcement education program and already has law enforcement volunteers willing to be trained and in turn train their departments. Back here in Colorado Springs, the Human Trafficking Task Force for Southern Colorado is working to integrate trafficking education into public school curriculums. The belief being that not only should an understanding of this issue start at a young age, but also that those targeted should be aware of the issue. So far, the task force reports that many public schools are open to the educational add-on. Now, that is a lot to take in, so let's go ahead and recap. First, human trafficking represents the 2nd largest criminal industry in the world and the fastest growing. Here in the U.S., reports of trafficking are increasing every year, in large part due to a growing awareness and desire to fight back. And that desire to fight back has several strong backers here in Colorado, all who are using collaboration, the most powerful weapon, they say, in their crime-fighting arsenal. Now, several bills are being proposed this legislative session that will help to mitigate the damage of human trafficking in this state. Also, remember this: if you see something, call the right people. Calls need to be made to local law enforcement and also the human trafficking hotline at 888-3737-888. It's an easy number to remember. And finally, for those of you wanting to help or get their hands on more information, head on over to the KOAA News 5 app, where there will be links and information on how to get involved and how to become better educated on the subject. Now, that's it for now. Always watching out for you, John McMichael, News 5.